A word that's often associated with pro wrestling is pageantry, and a big part of that pomp and circumstance for many wrestlers is elaborate face paint, to the point you rarely, if ever, see some of them without it. The icon Sting shuffled through a few different looks during his nearly 40 years as a wrestler, but they all included a face full of makeup. He first came on the scene in the mid-'80s as one half of the tag team the Blade Runners, where he and partner Jim Hellwig wore dark makeup around their eyes. By 1987, Sting had gone solo and joined up with a promotion that would soon become WCW. He attained massive popularity with a babyface character who would become known as Surfer Sting, who had spiky, bleached blonde hair and colorful face paint that sort of resembled a superhero mask. Audience tastes had shifted quite a bit by the mid-'90s, so after a transitional period, Sting eventually debuted a new darker look with long dark hair and black and white face paint. While Sting was clearly looking for a new way to present himself, Scott Hall, Sting's on-screen enemy from the NWO, suggested a look similar to the one of the title character from the movie The Crow. Sting told Bleacher Report, "I thought my character had to change before fans started sticking their finger down their throat." Hall says, "You know what you should do? Get a trench coat, man. Paint your face white. Put some black around your eyes. Something mysterious." Since then, Sting has worn variations on that same makeup. When he joined the NWO Wolfpack, he changed it from white to red, and in TNA, he made it a little more colorful and became Joker Sting. He retired from in-ring action in 2024 and has appeared out of makeup as his real-life self, Steve Borden, in a few interviews and movie roles.
You have to be an athlete and you have to be an actor. You have to know the psychology and the timing of wrestling.
The other half of the Blade Runners alongside Sting, Jim Hellwig, wrestled as the Dingo Warrior for a while after splitting off from the team. Then he went to the WWF in the late 80s, becoming the Ultimate Warrior and one of the company's top stars. With his signature colorful face paint that also looked like a superhero's mask, the Warrior became a fan favorite. He had an undeniable energy. His entrance involved running to the ring at full speed, then wildly shaking the ropes. He was almost definitely worn out before the match even started, and that showed in his often short matches, but the fans loved him anyway. In 1990, he did what was then believed impossible, beating Hulk Hogan for the WWF title at WrestleMania 6. He held the title for 300 days, but backstage disputes led to a few departures and returns, as well as a stint in WCW. His absences were so long, in fact, that there were rumors that there were actually two different Ultimate Warriors, with the one who showed up in 1996 being a totally different guy. But it was still Hellwig. Those backstage disputes led Hellwig to legally change his name to Warrior. He continued to go by that name after mostly retiring from wrestling. He went on controversial speaking tours with shorter hair, a goatee, and no makeup, looking like a very different guy. In 2014, Warrior patched things up with WWE and was inducted into the company's Hall of Fame. He died from a heart attack just a few days later at the age of 54. Melissa Cervantes wrestled in Lucha Underground under a mask as Cobra Moon, but has mostly wrestled in makeup under the name Thunder Rosa. Her wrestling resume includes stints in Stardom, Ring of Honor, Women of Wrestling, and Tokyo Joshi Pro, but she really grabbed people's attention in the NWA, where she was the women's champion through most of 2020. La Mera Mera made the jump to AEW while still the NWA champ, winning their women's title in 2022. Unfortunately, she had to relinquish it due to injury. She returned in late 2023. Rosa is known for the eye-popping variations of intricate Dia de los Muertos-style skull makeup she wears while on the job. Unlike Danhausen, she's not super protective of her face on social media, often posting makeup-free selfies. She has also experimented with a glitzier makeup design that doesn't cover so much of her face. Folks may also have seen her without face paint in settings outside of wrestling, where she's also very accomplished. Cervantes was once an MMA fighter. She also holds a bachelor's degree in sociology and has been a social worker.
So I always like to help people. I always like to, volunteer in my community and just do all things for other people.
He's the Boogeyman, and he's coming to get ya, and he'll always do it in full face makeup. If you don't know the Boogeyman's WWE origin, it's weird, even for pro wrestling. In the storyline, he was an actor from a fictional canceled TV show. Since he was still under contract to the network, an executive brought him to SmackDown as part of a new talent initiative. The exec couldn't figure out what else to do with a hulking guy who was method acting a fairy tale monster, wore black and red face paint, and had a penchant for smashing clocks over his head. Thankfully, the whole actor conceit got dropped, and the Boogeyman simply became a spooky guy who memorably scared people, shouted his catchphrase, and ate worms. He even sometimes wrestled matches. The man behind the actor behind the Boogeyman is Marty Wright, who first tried to make his way into WWE through the reality series Tough Enough in 2004. He made it first cut, but when he admitted he had lied about his age, he said he was 30, but he was really 40, he got the boot. Yet he still got an invitation to OVW, then WWE's developmental territory, which eventually led to the Boogeyman. Wright remains so committed to the Boogeyman's look that he even continues to wear the full face paint when he wrestles independent matches and appears at conventions.
I only look for the bad people. Are you a good kid or a bad kid?
When Dustin Rhodes got his start in wrestling in the late 1980s, he was known by the nickname The Natural, which coincided with an all-natural look, no face paint. He had a hard time escaping the shadow of his dad, the legendary Dusty Rhodes. So when Dustin jumped from WCW to the WWF in 1995, he embraced the outlandish character he was given, Goldust. In a time when the most popular wrestlers were becoming more gritty and realistic, Goldust wore flashy feather robes and rocked full black and gold face paint. Goldust was a pretty controversial character. Many perceived it as both homophobic and an insult to Dusty. But Dustin made the most of it, portraying Goldust for a total of around 20 years. He even briefly teamed with his brother Cody Rhodes when Cody was a similar character, Stardust. Since portraying Goldust, Dustin has worked in some other promotions. He briefly returned to WCW, had a run in TNA, and now works for AEW. He's kept some version of the face paint in all of them. He does appear in interviews and elsewhere without it.
I'm just appreciative of the opportunities and things, and I ran with it, did good.
Dustin has explained that his dad was ultimately happy with Goldust, telling Sports Illustrated, "Before Dad passed, we talked so much about the Goldust character, what it grew into, and how much he was proud of it." Even before coming to WWE, Asuka made quite a splash with her elaborate makeup for matches in her native Japan, back when she was known as Kana. The sometimes spooky makeup was a great in-ring use of her background as a graphic designer. Honestly, it was probably right after Asuka made her way to WWE during her legendary NXT win streak and title reign that she probably wore the least makeup in the ring. During that time, she mostly just wore a single dark line of makeup across her face, or none at all, so if you were watching back then, you could identify her without makeup just fine. Since coming to the main roster, though, Asuka has considerably upped her makeup game, with looks ranging from extra splashes of color on her face to full-on creepy clown style reminiscent of her looks from Japan, which even include colored contact lenses. If you want to see Asuka completely barefaced, look no further than her popular YouTube channel, Kana-chan TV, where she vlogs for her more than 500,000 followers. The kayfabe definitely isn't what it used to be, but the very nice and very evil AEW and Ring of Honor star Danhausen is doing what he can to keep it alive. If he posts a photo of himself to his Instagram without his signature makeup, he almost always covers his bare face with a picture of his face in makeup. You'll have to go way back on his YouTube channel to find him out of makeup there either. The YouTube video without makeup? It's a montage of clips of his earliest matches under his full name, Donovan Danhausen. And he knew that it wasn't working. Danhausen told the New York Times, "I was just a bearded guy with the tattoos trying to be a tough guy, and I'm not a tough guy naturally, but I can be weird and charismatic, goofy. That's easy. That's also a role that most people don't want to fill." So Danhausen toyed with some different makeup styles to arrive at one similar to the demon Pazuzu from The Exorcist. His character evolved into one that's a little scary and mostly funny, and he is really committed to it. That said, he does appear out of makeup for an interview every once in a while.
Okay, very nice, very evil.
Often I get described if a demon possessed you, actually.
Fans have almost definitely seen the man who portrayed Papa Shango out of makeup, but unless you knew it was the same guy, you'd probably never realize it. Charles Wright debuted as Papa Shango, a voodoo priest character similar to some earlier characters of his, in the WWF in 1992. He wore skull-themed face paint and terrorized some of the company's top stars, particularly the Ultimate Warrior. The character was very similar to voodoo spirit Baron Samedi, specifically the portrayal from the James Bond movie Live and Let Die. Wright even used that name in a previous version of the character, and told film hounds that he drew from the movie character for Papa Shango. By late 1993, Shango and Wright were gone from the WWF. When Wright returned in 1995, it was as a new character, Kama, the Supreme Fighting Machine, who eventually joined the Nation of Domination. He wore no face paint as Kama and also didn't really get over. Wright reinvented himself again in 1998, debuting his new character, the Godfather, a flashy pimp who was always accompanied by a group of women who were supposedly in his employ. That character proved very popular and ended up being how Wright was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2016. To prove just how unrecognizable the Doink the Clown makeup makes someone, there were actually multiple Doinks over the years, with some fans never knowing the difference. There were two Doinks at the same time at one point. Chris Jericho even disguised himself as Doink to pull a trick on William Regal once, and it was hard to tell it was him until he put on the Walls of Jericho. All that said, one wrestler was associated with Doink more strongly and for a longer time than anyone, Matt Bourne. Though Bourne wrestled as himself throughout the 1980s, he took on the Doink persona in the WWF in 1993, becoming the first and is widely considered the best. Long after leaving the WWE, Bourne continued to portray Doink on independent shows. Bourne, who died in 2013 at 55 years old, looked nothing like the character with the makeup off. Though he wrestled as Doink until his death, he also sometimes wrestled without the makeup and under his real name, too. The Road Warriors, known in WWE as the Legion of Doom, were perhaps the most dominant duo in the history of tag team wrestling. Their face paint, mohawks, and spiky shoulder pads made them just a few of the wrestlers whose look was inspired by the bad guys from the Mad Max movies. But Animal and Hawk particularly stood out with their brutal in-ring style, winning gold in just about every promotion where they worked. The Road Warriors' dominance ran through the 1980s into the 1990s, but once the 2000s hit, things got a lot more difficult for them. Hawk, real name Michael Hegstrand, struggled with addiction. That addiction became part of a WWE storyline that almost everyone involved would probably rather forget. Hegstrand passed away in 2003 at just 46 years old. Animal, real name Joe Laurinaitis, continued to wrestle. He also made appearances at conventions, but like so many other professional wrestlers, he also died relatively young, at the age of 60 in 2020. The Rock paid homage to the duo after Laurinaitis' death, writing on Instagram, "When I was making my bones, still learning the business in the WWE as a very young The Rock, I wrestled these guys so many times on the road and they always took good care of me and made sure I learned. Tough as nails, good men, greatest tag team of all time." If you or anyone you know needs help with addiction issues, help is available. Visit the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration website or contact SAMHSA's National Helpline at 1-800-662-HELP 4357.